Last week I yelled at you about running backs. Today it is my time to do it for wide receivers. We are going to talk about 5 wide receivers that I really like in drafts this year and 5 that I am fading at their current cost. We're going to go through ones both at the top, middle, and back of your draft. So lock in, let's do it. Now, first up is Justin Jefferson. We are targeting him this year, and for the very few loyal viewers, you already knew he was going to be on this list, but for those of you who are new or are tuning in for the first time, I'm all in on the J. Jetta's bounce back this year. Everything you look at last year compared to the rest of his career was just purely a QB stat, right? Like J.J. McCarthy was just really bad. It is what it is. That's just what it was, and now we no longer have that as the case. We have Kyler Murray in there. Jefferson, over the course of his career, with all non-J.J. McCarthy quarterbacks, so like not even saying good guys, that includes like your Nick Mullins of the world, your Carson Wentz of the world, he has scored 19.9 fantasy points per game in PPR, which would have made him wide receiver 3 last year, only behind JSN and Puka Nacua. Now we get Kyler in there. We don't even need him to be good, right? Even if he's league average, that would be great, and I think that he is in a position to do so. Kyler, it hasn't been great for him. It wasn't great last year, but he goes into the most offensive-friendly system he's had in his career. Kevin O'Connell has gotten the best out of mediocre quarterback talents before, a la Kirk Cousins, a la Sam Darnold, in stretches, dudes, again, like Nick Mullins, like Josh Dobbs. Like, he just gets the most out of these guys, and I think that people's judgment is just way too clouded without realizing that J.J. McCarthy truly is that bad. So we're getting a discount on a truly elite plus level talent this year that you really don't normally get the chance to do. I think it's a very real chance that Jefferson's still just, the best receiver in the league, and he'll remind everyone why this year. So if you're at the back of the first round, and even in some places now I'm seeing him at the start of the second round, I am drafting Jefferson wherever I can. To be totally honest, I feel pretty good about most of the wide receivers at the top of the draft board this year, but if there was one where I would feel a little bit hairy about, who is going in the same general region as Justin Jefferson, they actually go back-to-back in ADP, it would be Drake London. Now, it's nothing against his talent. He's a beast, especially a red zone threat, but I'm just really scared of Tua throwing the ball downfield, right? I know there's very limited target competition here. I know he did it with subpar quarterback play last year. I get all that, but just watch Tua throw, man. He's throwing meatball subs down the field, and I don't know if we're going to be able to get that deep target volume, and I just get scared that it could be a total mess in Atlanta this year, and I think if it were to go wrong for one of the guys, it probably would be Drake London before it would be Bijan, and you have to pay a very high price to go get London. I just think that I'd prefer other dudes that you can draft at similar price point, obviously Jefferson being one of them, but others like George Pickens, a Nico Collins, a Malik Neighbors, like guys that I would prefer over Drake London, the guy we're going to talk about next, as well. So I don't know. It's just a little bit risky of a proposition, and there I think are more ways for it to go really sideways for London this year, and more, not really for London, more just for Atlanta because of the quarterback play, than it is for a lot of the other guys that you're taking in this area. So he's a little bit of a tentative fade for me at the top of drafts. And one of those guys that I wouldn't be afraid to take over Drake London is Chris Olave. And honestly, we have him ranked wide receiver 12 at overall 26. I probably want to move him up and maybe flip him with Olave coming off of the Jordyn Tyson injury news. Again, if you've watched me this spring, summer, you know how high I am on the New Orleans Saints offense as a whole. We think, Tyler Shuck is a year 2 breakout candidate. They play an easy schedule in the Dome. They have Kellen Moore, who's very fantasy friendly because he plays at a very high pace. And Olave just ate last year with Shuck under center. He was averaging about 18 fantasy points per game, pacing at wide receiver 5. And now with Tyson out for the foreseeable future, we're pretty much got the same setup again for this year. And I think the Saints are in a position where they're going to be better than last year, and it's an offense that could potentially be exciting, and Olave is going to be at the centerpiece of that. So he's a guy I want to target, part of an offense that I want to be targeting as well, and is one in the third round that is a very easy click for me, especially if you start off running back heavy in your drafts. I feel totally cool with Chris Olave as my wide receiver 1, and would feel confident going into that with the season with strong running backs going ahead of him. So great third round pick down in New Orleans, Chris Olave. Now, this one hurts to say, but I have a little baby fade in on Emeka Egbuka right now. I love the player. He goes in a similar place as Olave a little bit later, but he's a guy that I think I would just prefer the dudes that are being drafted around him purely because of this injury speculation. I know that the reports haven't been overly doom and gloom on him so far, but I am a little bit scared off with the whole toe sprain that's going on right now. I think that the reporting has been very vague, and there's a decent chance that he has some level of turf toe going on, in which case that his performance is going to be hindered for the first part of the season. That's an injury that really impacts your explosiveness and ability to come in and out of cuts, and is something that can last for a while. If you think about last year, it's a quarterback, so it's even less of a requirement for explosiveness and cutting, but it kept Brock Purdy out in San Francisco for almost 2 months. So that would be a scary proposition for Egbuka, especially with how high you have to draft him. Again, I think he's in a pretty solid spot as a year 2 breakout, but I really don't like starting the season like this. And I think he also is just drafted in a pretty attractive like pod full of wide receivers that go around him. I think right now, just in terms of like looking at the situations, guys that are not hurt and also have a solid outlook, dudes like T. Higgins, Tet McMillan, Zay Flowers, Lad McConkey, guys like that, I think I would just high break those over Egbuka because I am just a little bit more scared about this toe thing than other people seem to be. Again, if we start to get reports over the next couple weeks that's fine and like he's back at practice, then I'll walk this back. But for right now, it doesn't seem that way, and it's a little bit of a scary proposition for me right now, especially as high as you have to take him. All right, I'm sparing you by not talking about Terry in this video, but I couldn't leave without talking about one of him or Watson. So we're going to talk about Christian Watson again. I am actively targeting him wherever I can in the 5th, 6th round, wherever you got to take him. His ADP, honestly, is closer to like the back of the 6th, which is just music to my ears. Again, he's going to be a full-time player there in Green Bay. They pay him a bunch of money this offseason. He's going to be the Z wide receiver, which means that he's going to be moved all over the formation. He's going to be getting short intermediate routes along with that deep stuff that is really good for him over the course of his career. And I think that there's a really good chance that the Packers throw the ball more this year. They have a poor offensive line, and their defense is projected to take a step back. I think they're going to have to put the ball in Jordan Love's hands a little bit more, and that should benefit Watson probably more than anyone else on this team. Again, he was wide receiver 19 last year in points per game after he came off the torn ACL in 10 total games played, and that was as a very part-time player, right, only playing about 60% of snaps. As the full-time Z, he probably will not leave the field outside of getting a breather here or there. I expect him to easily surpass 80% snap share when he's healthy, so I think the sky's the limit for Christian Watson. Again, I made a whole video specifically talking about Watson. That's how good I feel about him. I'll link that in the description if you want to watch, but I am big on him in the middle rounds this year. Now, I can't believe these two guys are drafted near each other, but the next one to talk about here is Courtland Sutton, who I am fading. I got him way below his market price right now. This is really the first time in this stage of his career where he's actually had real target competition. I feel like he's just kind of gotten there on volume because, the Broncos have nobody to throw the ball to outside of him the past, 3-4 years. And last year, it felt gross, and he just kind of got there because, again, no target competition, and they had the highest pass rate in the entire league. Bo Nix led the NFL in pass attempts. That's a stat that probably won't be sticky 2 years in a row, especially with how good this defense is. I imagine they probably don't want to do that as much. And obviously now they spend the primo draft capital to go trade for Jalen Waddle, who will be the alpha there. He's a way better player than Sutton. At the same time, right, Sutton is 29 going on 30. He is approaching that age curve, and you start to see the fall off for him. Like, his numbers have declined year over year. And, maybe just from an armchair ball watcher perspective, I just have never really liked him, and I don't think he's that good. Sorry if that offends you, but that's my opinion, and I will not be drafting much of him this year. And that doesn't even count the fact that Pat Bryant has been getting a ton of hype out of camp, and there's murmurs and rumblings that he could potentially take Sutton's job as the number 2 wide receiver this year. And, that's just an interesting little point. I'm not even counting that in terms of why I'm fading Sutton, but it's just another reason to avoid him this year in the mid rounds. There are lots of other guys that, have a better path to relevance and having a good year than this guy, who I think is just kind of over the hill and pretty unspectacular as a guy who won't do as well when he doesn't get force fed the ball. All right, so if you've been following me, I've been all over Josh Downs the entire summer. Candidly, I made this pick before the Keenan Allen signing, but I'm in too deep at this point. I'm holding the line on Downs. I'm hopeful that it's more of an indictment on just them not having a lot of wide receiver depth there in Indianapolis, and Alec Pierce being hurt, basically having no one to throw the ball to right now. Tyler Warren actually just went down with an injury today, so things are kind of a mess in Indy. I'm not going to let Keenan Allen ruin my hopes and dreams of a full-time Josh Downs. I think he's too good of a player, and there's been too much steam over the summer for them to just completely walk back their words and not use him at this point. I mean, this is the last chance, right? I feel like everyone's talked up Josh Downs for a couple years now. If it's not this year, I promise I will give up, but I feel very good about this year. His draft price is very low. You can get him at, around wide receiver 40. I like the fact that Keenan, it will probably scare the ADP from moving up more. Downs' ADP maybe a couple weeks ago was closer to 120. It's jumped all the way up to 100. Hopefully people get scared off by the Keenan Allen news. I'm candidly a little bit scared, but I'm not letting it scare me off. I feel like less people will be as confident as myself. I just think, again, the key for Downs is being on the field in 2 wide receiver sets and getting some outside usage, as the coaching staff has been preaching all offseason that they're going to do with him. He scores about 14 fantasy points per game in his career when he plays over 70 snaps, which basically means he's on the field in those 2 receiver sets as opposed to just being a slot guy. So Michael Pittman's gone. Daniel Jones coming off the torn Achilles. He's probably going to check the ball down more underneath and intermediate more than pushing it deep. And we just got to beat out old man Keenan Allen, which, it's not the easiest thing to do in the world. To ask Lad McConkey last year, but I'm hopeful that our guy Downs can do it. We're not going to let correlation equal causation, and we're going to bet on a guy in the late rounds. At least last year you were taking in the second round. So if Josh Downs disappoints, he's still a double-digit round pick who you're not relying on to start in your lineup. But I do think that he will be a reliable starter for you this year. I'm pretty confident, and we're going to beat out that fat old man Keenan. We're going to do it. Josh Downs FC, let's ride. Now this is an injury-related fade, but I want to include it just so that everyone is aware if you're not hip to the injury streets. Jordyn Tyson, rookie wide receiver in New Orleans. He's actually Chris Olave's teammate, who I am targeting. He went down with a hamstring injury that is expected to keep him out 2 months, so he's missing at least probably the first 4 or 5 games of the season. At the very least, I think it'll end up being longer than that. Unfortunately, this is like a super big deal. One, because he's a rookie and is not going to get that chance to kind of acclimate and get his sea legs in the NFL. But number two, it's the fact that Tyson has had such a storied injury history, which is very sad. He's had this hamstring bothering him on and off basically for like 2 years now. It kind of ruined his entire junior year last year at Arizona State. He wasn't able to participate in the combine or any of the pre-draft stuff because of it, and now it's flaring up yet again. So I think it's just a total hands-off, especially a soft tissue thing like hamstring, and we've seen it can just give out and flare up at any moment, especially for him. So I think just let someone else take the chance in the late rounds. I just don't think he's going to be much of a factor this year, unfortunately. He has so much raw talent, but I think it's just already an uphill climb for him to be a contributor as a rookie. Maybe it happens down the stretch, but I think probably whoever drafts him late is going to get so frustrated and probably cut him before that ends up being the case, where you could maybe grab him off the waiver wire. So he's a guy that I am just all set not taking in a draft. If you want to take a young upside dude around this range instead, if his ADP continues to drop, like take a dude like a Casey Concepcion or something instead if you want to take that shot. I'm just all set on a rookie who's going to miss at least the first month and a half of the season and has a pretty degenerative hamstring, which is very sad because Tyson's talented and I wanted to be in, but the injury is making me do otherwise. That's right, we're hammering home the Green Bay wide receivers. I'm talking about 5 that I like today, 2 play in Green Bay. Like I mentioned with Watson, I expect the team to throw the ball a little bit more this year, and that wide receiver rotation that we've hated the past couple of years is now gone, right? Dontavian Wicks gone, Romeo Doubs gone. There's just 3 wide receivers left there in Green Bay. Golden, Watson, who we already talked about, and Jayden Reed. Now, we have seen through their preseason games, through camp, and through the Packers family night live scrimmage in Lambeau, which is kind of like their dress rehearsal for the season generally, that these guys are going to play very structured roles, which is what we love to see. It's predictable in fantasy. And even Jordan Love, the quarterback, has said it himself that Matthew Golden is going to be the full-time X wide receiver for the Packers. What does that mean? It means that he will be on the field pretty much all the time. That is your primary deep and intermediate wide receiver on the outside. So he'll be in the game in 2 wide receiver sets. Jayden Reed is going to be just pretty much a slot-only guy, so he'll only be on the field when they play 3 receiver. So this is a huge win for Matthew Golden because just wide receiver numbers across the board when you're on the field with only 2 wide receivers as opposed to 3, all of the metrics and production just jumps up, and you're just getting more snaps, which equals more targets, more production, etc., etc. So we like that, and even though he was a little bit disappointing as a rookie, Golden is a burner. He was a first-round talent that Green Bay invested into. He was a couple deep plays just away from connecting and being really interesting last year for fantasy. If a couple of those go a different way, if Jordan Love throws the ball a little better, if he catches it, whatever, like we're looking at Golden completely differently. And I think that his price point just really is not taking that into account, and is a guy that I'm willing to take a couple rounds above ADP. Again, I want to invest in the Green Bay passing game, and I think Watson and Golden are both good bets at draft cost. I wanted to find one more guy to highlight to fade, and honestly, once you get into the area of ADP where we're looking at here, it's tough to find guys to make like a really distinct case for that you shouldn't draft once you're past like 150 or whatever. But I did stumble across this. I don't know why Jerry Jeudy's ADP is still like in the drafted range within the top 160. So that's gross. I don't have him ranked anywhere because you just shouldn't take him. He's bad. The Browns bring in 2 primo draft capital wide receivers to go ahead of him. All the reports on them in camp have been fantastic. Everyone loves them. Jerry Jeudy's not very good. I did love him when he was coming out into the draft. I was convinced he was going to be very good in yesteryear, but that's why I am not an NFL GM, because that brother has not been very good. Outside of that one little Cinderella, Linsanity stretch that he had with Jameis in Cleveland a couple years ago, Judy's been pretty disappointing for the most of his career. And you know what? I'm going to give Jameis the credit for that, not Jeudy, because Jameis is the GOAT. So, take whoever you want in the late rounds at wide receiver, just not Jerry Jeudy. I don't know why his price is here, and just don't be the dumbass that takes him because he's at the top of your queue on ESPN. So that's going to do it for today. Let me know in the comment section what you think of these picks. If you have any wide receivers that you are particularly going after in your drafts this year, would love to hear it, get the discourse going. But yeah, hope you enjoyed. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. That helps your boy out in the algo a decent bit. And subscribe if you're new. We're going to keep making these videos throughout the season, so stay tuned.